Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have Have you ever wondered? No, I'm going to do this different. You're going to sit on back and discover in 60 minutes how 3 minutes can change your life. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. You can find it on Amazon. Join us on Facebook, A Tribe of Giants. We're a great group of people gathered together and support each other through their own Giants journey. And if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time.
Every
Sometimes that's a
time.
tongue twister.
Yeah,
We made it through.
we made
I'm
it.
so excited for the things that are happening in the tribe. We've got right now currently we're running SG6. By we, I mean Nick. He's facilitating SG6. That is full and running and cruising along, and some amazing things are happening there. SG7 is coming up. It's being facilitated by me. So get ready. It's gonna be
Get
rad.
ready. It's
It's
going to
gonna
be
be
awesome.
freaking
It's going to
rad,
change your life.
Giants. Yes, it'll be awesome. It'll be fun. We'll
It
have
will be
fun.
fun. Yep.
And
It'll
Nick
be
will be
life
there
changing, though,
just in case all the wheels fall off.
just in case. I'll be there. I'll be
Yep.
the training wheels.
Yes, it'll be awesome. What else do we got, Nick? What's happening?
Well, right now, that's it. We've got the 12journeys.com. If you haven't seen the training on there, the free training, go to 12journeys.com or 12journeyscoaching.com. I'll put the link up here in a minute. But outside of that, we're just having fun growing the Giants around the world and bringing in incredible guests like Brant Pinvidic, who we're going to talk about. Yeah, who we're
That's my
excited to
guy
have
right there.
on. So I'm going to introduce him in 3 minutes or less. That's my
Yeah,
goal. You
yeah.
ready? So Brant's an award-winning film director, veteran television producer, #1 best-selling author of The 3-Minute Rule. That's a book that you ought to go grab. I just finished that and did my own 3-minute pitch. He's a C-level sales and presentations coach, keynote speaker, top-rated podcast host, and a columnist for Forbes. Is that it, Brant?
I got a
And
few other things, but that's not bad. I should take you on the road with me and do all
I
my
was gonna
intros.
say, and he's pretty easy on the eyes.
He's pretty easy on the eyes. So he's sold more than 300 TV shows and movies, run a TV network, helmed one of the largest production companies in the world, and was named to the Hollywood Reporter's 30 most powerful reality TV sellers. So he's taken the life, business, and storytelling lessons he's developed during his Hollywood career to help hundreds, from Fortune 100 CEOs to PTA presidents. He's helped them to simplify their message and their pitch in their business, product, or service in 3 minutes or less. And we're excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. That's a great intro, man. It's almost like I wrote it myself.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, right?
Exactly.
I've heard that somewhere. Well, we like
Pretty
to,
funny.
we do it a little different here. We like to go through your journey. So we will talk about your expertise as well. That'll naturally
Yeah.
come through it. But we want to go through your journey, where you went from maybe a level of unconsciousness and playing your life automatically from whatever you developed through development. And then the awakening to that, at what point did you awaken to yourself as you are today and start growing into that? But can we go through your history a little bit, your
Yeah,
unconscious stage?
You can go
of
You-
way back
course.
if you want to. You go to childhood, wherever there was the most trauma. That's where we like to go.
and
Yeah.
don't go too far back. You're like, and
Well,
there I
listen.
was swimming.
No,
And
the trauma's pretty easy because I grew up in Canada as an entrepreneur, and that is trauma built right
That's
into the
traumatic.
culture. Yeah.
I've heard that.
So yeah. So I just, for me, it was not being uh, surrounded by or in a place that supported me. And I didn't know that that's what it was, but in hindsight, I can see that that's where my issues really were. But I never could find my way. I could never find the right, you know, surroundings. I never felt supported. I always felt sort of ostracized for my ideas or for the way I wanted to do things, sometimes rightfully so. But at the end of the day, that was a very difficult process for me. And I wasn't the person that I wanted to be and I wasn't my potential was not being realized in any way. And so you get to the point where you start to question whether that is even what what you could be. Your potential that you see in yourself, when everything and everyone is telling you that that's not the way it is, you start to wonder if maybe that's true, right? And so that became a very difficult process for me. And then, it's a long story, but I got a little bit lucky and ended up in the sort of the throngs of Hollywood, and swept up in that. And the biggest piece for me was not, it wasn't being in a creative industry that I loved. It wasn't finally doing what I always wanted to do. I did not grow up wanting to be a television producer. I did not grow up wanting to be in Hollywood. That wasn't the goal, and that wasn't the moment for me. It was success that actually changed it for me. It went from being somebody who couldn't find success to being in a place surrounded by people and in a situation where what I did was celebrated, who I was appreciated, and I found success, and I became addicted to that process. And that's why I excelled, is because I just wanted to be good at something and be recognized for it. And this is a place in America and in Hollywood that's the way that works. And so I found my people and I found what I was supposed to be doing. And that was sort of that awakening moment where it's like, oh, I can be at this level. And so it made me want to aspire to actually become that.
Yeah, I want to go back because you said, it's a long story. Turns out we got 60 minutes here. You know?
And that's the end of our show.
And yeah,
And
we're
that's
about
the end
to
of
wrap.
that.
Going back to it,
So,
because what we like to highlight is for people that are watching, so they can see you in themselves and their own journeys, because a lot of people are
Yeah.
stuck on purpose and how do I discover my why and what I'm doing, and not the cliche kind of why, but like you said, you were seeking something in your life that wasn't there. So when you're going through development, people are saying all this stuff that's contrasting what you think should be in your world, and then you start to second guess yourself. That's where we like to hang out. It's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's
Yes.
can you talk a little bit about it, like your identity that was developed, and when you woke up to that and found out, what, I've been playing it this way and I don't want to do that anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's a hard process because you can only really understand it looking backwards. Like, that's the truth, is if you're trying to look where you are now and trying to figure out where you're supposed to be and how you're going to be on the other side, it's really hard to do because you're so connected to the process that it's hard to be objective. And I think that that's like anything. If you're in TV, if you're pitching an idea or you're writing a script, it's like it's hard to read your own stuff, right? And I find that even in my own, I'm the guy who wrote the 3-minute rule, and it took me, I don't know, it took me 6 weeks to write the intro and get it to 3 minutes, because it's like it's my own stuff and it's hard to do. And so it's the same thing in life. Like, I just didn't know that was my issue, right? Like, I always wanted to be an American. I always wanted to move to the United States because it was so celebratory in nature, but I just didn't know that it would change me. I thought I definitely wanted to be in a different position. I didn't want to be in different things, but I didn't know it was going to unlock the elements in me that I've kind of always hoped that were there, that you start to doubt
Yeah.
after a while, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that was a big change for me, being able to explore my own sort of self-satisfaction. Like, I was finally okay with myself. And it wasn't all pretend. And I'll give you a really good example. Like, I decided to do a television show when I was in Canada. I'd never been on television set. I don't know anything about TV. I just thought it was a good idea, and I spent my own money and I raised money, and like, it's just a disaster, a terrible idea, and you should never do that. And it just went. I was able to film it, and I couldn't sell it in Canada, and it was a nightmare. And I was living in my parents' basement with my 2-year-old child and my wife, and it was just like, my parents are like, you got to go get a job. And so when I had come to the United States, it was like people saw this work as I was pitching this idea, and nobody was doing that in television at that time. Like, it was particularly reality television was very new, and they just were so shocked. Like, who would do all this work for an idea? Like, this is amazing. Like, this guy has such foresight and ability to lay stuff out, and they just didn't understand that I did it out of desperation and out of need and all of these things, right? And so it was so valued that I ended up getting these big job offers from
Yeah.
my first trip to Los Angeles
So here
to
you
be in
are. You
TV.
started out at one goal.
Yeah.
That was a
I was
disaster.
just trying to sell the show. I was
But
just trying to be
yeah,
like, and I remember saying it was interesting because what happened was I met like a very low level producer, like DD level, and begged to take a meeting. They took a meeting,
it
and
was a
they were so excited.
double D level.
Yeah, double D level. And they were so excited and they just couldn't believe what they were watching that they were like, hey, we got to introduce you to this person and this person. And the next thing you know, it's like it's Jerry Bruckheimer and Dick Clark and all these crazy names. And you're like, holy crap. And it was really hard for me to figure out what to do, but it went so quickly.
Hmm.
And it was like I remember saying one of the guy he had created Baywatch, and he's a very wealthy guy, and he really liked the show, and he thought it was such a great idea, and he was going to be able to sell it because I had all this material. And I said, listen, I'm so broke, I need $25,000. Give me $25,000, you can have half the entire thing. And that's just not the way they do things here. You don't really pay for stuff in advance. You go try to sell it, right? So, and I remember him taking me around to his lawyer and his agent to find out, like, should he just write this check? Like, is it as good as he thinks it is, right? Which was unfortunate for him and fortunate for me, his sort of downfall, because his agent and his lawyer were like, oh my God, this is amazing. We could sell this tomorrow. And I started thinking to myself, well, maybe I don't need him as much anyways. So I got a bunch of job offers because they just saw all this work and they thought it was just amazing. And I moved down to Los Angeles, and 6 months later I had sold this pilot, and we were screening the pilot in Las Vegas. And it's like, it's one of those things. It's the one-way glass, and people on the other side, you pay $25 in a sandwich to tell you terrible things about your idea and whatnot. And I'd never seen this. I've seen it on TV or whatever, but I'm sitting there, my first television pilot ever. And the guy who's running the thing comes in. It's me, and the president of the network is there. And he goes, hey guys, do you guys want to do the slide or the dial for the audience interaction? And Paul, the president of the network, turns and looks at me and goes, I don't know, Brant, you've done this more than I have. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I like the slide. So, because he didn't know
You
me
don't want
other
to
than
pick
when
the
he
wrong
met
one
me.
either.
Well, and he just didn't know. He didn't know my story. He just knows that I'm one of those guys and I had a fancy agent then and sold the show and to get introduced to it, and we got along. And so in his mind, he's assuming I'm a TV producer. So he's just, yeah, he's only been to a few of these screenings. He figures since I'm in that room with him, I must
You
have been
do it
more,
all the
right?
time. Yeah.
I don't want to
And
look dumb.
so,
You look dumb.
right.
Yeah. I
And
don't know. Let's
so
do the merry-go-round.
you get very comfortable with the imposter syndrome, right? When things are going well, you're very comfortable with the imposter syndrome. When things are going difficult, it's hard to deal with. So things were going well, and it was kind of like, haha, I'm pulling the wool over these people's eyes. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm figuring it out as I go, right? Well, figuring out as I go, sold dozens of television shows and whatnot. And 4 years after I moved, I got a job as a head of a TV network, as a head of programming for one of the Discovery channels. And I remember thinking like, wait, like maybe I'm not pretending anymore. Like maybe I do have the skills to be in this moment, because as an entrepreneur, I had always been punching above my weight basically.
Hmm.
And so when I finally got a big job at a huge corporation, it was sort of like this validation of like, hey, this is not me scamming anybody. It's not me like making the great pitch and they don't know what they're getting. It's just like this is the real deal, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really big moment. Now I got fired a year later, so maybe it wasn't such a thing.
I love the
But
vulnerability. You're like, yeah, it was
yeah,
great, and then this happened. But
yeah. So then,
I want to stay on the imposter syndrome, because
yeah,
it's not fake it till you make it. It's you are trying to be that, or you're working to be that while you're creating yourself as that. So you really do have that in you, but you just don't see it. Is
yeah.
that right? Or
100%. Like it's you need, like, you have potential, you have the things what you're doing, but you need the catalysts, and you need the vehicle, and you need everything to be right in a lot of ways, right? And I think unfortunately our entrepreneurial culture has trained people to look past the no and don't take no for an answer and believe in yourself above all things and that kind of stuff. And I think that's super dangerous. And I speak to colleges and schools for free all across the country and at any time. And my biggest thing is like, do you believe that you could be anything you want if you put your mind to it? And everybody says yes. And it's like, no, you can't. Who told you that? That's completely wrong.
You cannot be Michael Jordan or LeBron James.
I literally say that. I was like, so is one of you going to be the next Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran or LeBron James if you really
Oh,
put your mind to it? No,
that
no,
was
you can't.
Michael.
Right. So, and that's the thing. Like, you need other elements, not just the belief in yourself. The belief in yourself is great. It just doesn't get you there. The world is
Yeah.
too competitive. It's too difficult. And you are not the clearest vision of your capabilities and success. You are marred with and I wrote an article for Forbes exactly about this, about people who don't take no for an answer. And it's like, you have to know the difference between your inner voices, right? And situational doubt is different than self-doubt, and people get that confused because they get into a seminar or something and yeah I can do it, and it's like, wait, like, have you ever seen a restaurant that goes into the same location and closes a year later every single time? That's because somebody else goes in there that believes in themselves and doesn't care that the last 9 restaurants closed in that exact location, right? Like, I get it. Maybe you can push past it, but that's not the ideal situation, right? Or Lady Gaga will get up, win an Oscar, and tell people that people didn't want to take her seriously, and she was told no so many times, and she wants that to be an inspirational story for little girls all around. It's like, what? No, you're one of the greatest performers of all time, and you had almost an impossible time. So you think someone who's not at the highest level at that caliber is going to be able to make it and just tell their vocal coach to that I'm not going to listen to you? Like, that's the worst advice possible. It's the worst advice possible. It's like, you will not make it to the NBA. You will not be a Grammy award winning superstar unless you are so spectacular and then work harder than anybody else on the planet. Like, that's the reality of the world today, right? And so for me, I was pushing the rock up the hill always in my life. I was looking for a shortcut. And the shortcut in life is always a longer way around. It just is. And people are enamored with my success at this point, which is great. But if I had just picked something and stuck with it and done half as much work as I've done in my life, I'd be twice as rich and twice as successful. That's a fact. And
Huh.
I could have picked anything. I could be a house painter. I could have been a babysitting company. I could have been a wedding planner. I could have picked anything. And if I would have put half as much work and total focus, I'd be twice as rich, twice as fast. That's
Yeah,
just a
let's
fact.
let's talk about the attention that you give to it, right? Whatever the
Yeah,
thing is, whatever you choose to do, because we're all choosing different things. In the Giants journey, it's not about what you do on the external, it's who you are on the inside when you're doing that,
right.
right? Um, so putting the attention and picking one thing. So many of us want to do all these things, and we want to say, I can do this, I'm
Yeah,
that, I'm that. What we've noticed is when we focus in on what we do best, which is teaching people to see their highest good, their value, because a lot of people don't
yeah,
see their value, they're stuck. When we can do that, our business grows because of our focused attention on one thing rather than focusing on everything. Now, is that a little different from what you're describing here? Because I can hear that you want to be skilled at something. You want to be maybe naturally talented at one thing, but then you got to work for it, right?
yeah, yeah. And
Now, yeah,
that is part of the rub, is that, like, and I talk about this all the time, where it's like, you'll see people on YouTube or on TikTok telling you, like, here's how you get a passive 6-figure income.
yeah,
Just do this. And it's
yeah,
like, it's not, that's not how it works. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, all the side hustles and all the people telling you courses and all of that. It's like, if you were a real estate mogul, you wouldn't be selling a $99 real estate course. That's just all there is to it. If you were a brilliant stock trader, like, you wouldn't be selling a $29 Discord group to come and pay you to learn your stock. Like that's just not the way the world works. And so people have been getting programmed to like skip the hard work and the exercises and climb the ladder and the
Yeah,
rungs
yeah.
you need and the experience and all of that stuff. And it's just they get into the mix of what they're doing and they don't really focus on the end goal. And the end
Yeah.
goal of success, like what does it actually look like for you? What do you really want out of it? And then you can reverse engineer how you get there, right? And I talk to people that want to do TV shows all the time. And I was like, I get it, but you got to be honest about what you actually want. Do you want to be famous? Do you want to make money? Do you want recognition for like what is it that you actually want out of this? Because you telling me this is a great idea and you want to do a TV show and all this stuff is like I know that's part of it, but what's the real underlying like what's the underlying journey that you're really on? And so when I can usually get people to to explain that and to be honest about it, it changes the goals and then you can build strategy that actually makes sense.
Yeah,
And for
because
some people it's a complete
you're,
change from what they're doing.
you're coming from an authentic place too. I mean,
Yeah.
I wrote this book, I wrote The Giants and the Smalls 13 years ago. And for 13 years, it's been a grind, to even get
Yeah.
where we are today. It's been a grind and it takes a lot of
Yeah.
grit to just stick with it. I
He's
don't know if
he's
I did.
laughing too, Nick, because he did the same thing with his
Yeah.
show, with that first show, right? He went
Yeah.
Yeah.
through tons of shit to
You have
become
no idea.
the person that he is now. But
Yeah.
everybody just sees, oh wow, he just overnight success. Look at what he's
Yeah. You
got.
Easy
cannot
peasy. Yeah.
You can't look at someone else's highlight reel as your treasure map. It doesn't work like that. Okay. And that's what people see. They see my journey through Hollywood as a treasure map. Follow the X's and get there to the end to get the prize. And it's
A
like,
place to
no.
get, right? Not
Yeah.
where to come from, a place to get.
Right. They
Get to.
look, like I said, they look at it as a map
And everyone
and you
wants to
can follow
shortcut
these.
it.
And it's like, no, this is a highlight reel. There's nothing else. You don't know anything else that went on. And you can't do it the way I did. You just can't. There won't be another version of that. It doesn't work like that, right? And I think now it's worse. It's worse than it was before because you see YouTubers that are successful. You see people that just spring into overnight success in your mind. That's what you think. And you look at people like Logan and Jake Paul, and you're like, oh, it's so easy for them. And look how they just did it and just magically worked out. And you're like, that's not the truth. Like, if you knew those guys, you'd understand. Like, not only do they work ridiculously hard and went through unbelievable amounts of crap,
I thought
but
you were going to say the Island Boys, but I'll take Jake and
well,
Logan.
yeah,
But same
but
thing.
it's like, and Island Boys say things like, you don't know how long they were doing that consistently, and it's like, okay, so they're one in 175 million people doing the exact same thing. Like, if you like those odds, then go play the lottery.
Hmm.
Like, there are better ways to do that if you're relying on getting lucky, right? Like, you need to get lucky, but you need to have all the other pieces. You can't have that be your only play.
And even if
Yeah,
you're not lucky, if you're going through the crap and not catching the breaks, what it's doing to refine you and to sharpen your skills and say that, well, shit, that didn't work. Now what?
Yeah.
Okay, find a different way.
Yeah.
Get more creative. Work harder, smarter.
Yeah.
Find a mentor, right? Like any of
Yeah.
those things. It's all the things that you did along your journey, and it probably on some levels felt like it was accidental in some things, where somebody finally bit off, but it wasn't, because you found, if you wouldn't have done the things that you did, you wouldn't have been able to find the
No.
people that finally bought
Yeah,
the
and
the
again, it's hard. I'll give you a great example. So I train companies and CEOs, and I do as much work with startups as I can. It's not an easy thing to do in my time schedule, but I appreciate the entrepreneur and I appreciate the startup process. And so I've had a few startups lately with really, I mean, great ideas, right? And I help them refine their pitch and they get it down and they're out and they're slogging and trying to raise money and they're really working it. And it is genuinely a great idea. And then I had another one come to me, and these were former Apple executives that left Apple to go start up this makeup company, and not my forte whatsoever. And I don't even know how good the idea is because it's so out of my realm, right? But it's not a revolutionary idea in the sense that it's never, something that's never been done. It's a very unique piece of it, but I can't tell you how good the idea is, and I can't tell you whether people are going to like it or not. And usually I look at an idea and be like, that's a great idea. And so the difference is one, I'm thinking of a group of them. They're all struggling to raise money still. It's all just working and grinding. And the one that I'm not sure about if the idea is great or not great. I think it's great, but they raise money like that. We were able to get that done.
So
And
the
the
Apple
reason
execs.
is, that's right,
That's awesome.
is because when you go through their deck and you see what it was, you're like, oh, like you did this at Apple, you were a product launch specialist, and you set up your company and the structure and the research and the backstory and the ability that you have in the team exactly like Apple would do it. In fact, that pitch deck looks like Tim could be up there on stage giving it at the next Apple event. Like that's how detailed it is. Whether the product works, no one knows. And the irony is that people will totally take that risk. That's the startup, right? Whereas a lot of my other companies, there's a whole bunch of other variables. Who are you? Have you ever done this before? Do you have the history? Like, I don't know if you do this, or you don't know. I don't know your market size. I don't know your marketing plan. Like, none of those things are as well thought out. What they have is a really big, fun, bold idea, and they struggled. These girls had a very good idea that was very clean, but the amount of work they put in on the other side was so good that you're like, oh, right. They put in the work, they put in the effort, they dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and surprise, surprise, they're rewarded for it.
Okay, I want to hit on this because the idea of prediction, we're always predicting, right? We're making bets about the future and what's going to happen in the future. And somebody comes along, and my screen gets blocked up there. Somebody comes along and they've got a plan that looks like that's going to eliminate some of the guesswork that goes into prediction, right? Whether it's going to or not, we don't know. It's like the stock market. Some people think, I know what it's going to do. So they make bets based on that, based on their knowledge and experience. But somebody looks at a pitch like this and nobody knows really on the other side if it's going to go or not. I mean, you can do your best to guess, but you really don't know how the outcome's going to go until you get there. But when somebody puts the
and how do you
effort
deal with that?
Explaining it, right? Yeah,
That's right.
Go ahead.
And that was literally they took all of the other pieces of that puzzle away and said, all that's left to discover is whether the audience will like this product. That's it. There's nothing else. If the audience likes this, the product's going to get made. If the audience likes it, you can see success. That's what they were able to build. And for me, it was unique because I'm not used to that. I'm used to pitch decks and startup companies that's a really good idea. And I hope you'll be able to get there, and maybe you'll be able to make it work and all that kind of stuff, right?
Might as well go to Vegas, right?
I mean, in some ways, because it's like, if the idea works, I don't know that you'll be able to I don't know how you'll deal with it. And I had one that I was working with very closely, and, they really wanted me to help them raise money. And I was like, honestly, guys, like, it's a great idea, but until you bring on a partner, like, if I wrote you a $2 million check, what would you do with it? I don't, like, I know I can see the idea. I can see all of it. It makes perfect sense, but I don't have a sense of what you do with the actual dollars and cents. Like, we wouldn't even know what to do with it. You would just be like, what do we do now? And that's not, surprise, surprise, when that's the reality, you don't get a $2 million check.
This is powerful. I mean, the mindset that has to go into that of reverse engineering your vision. So you have your vision that's not here yet, but you have an idea of what could be on the other side of it. And then you reverse engineer that. And that's what the pitch deck is all of the steps that you see that would need to be in place for that to be a reality. And whether it is or not on the other side is an unknown, but the steps that you can control. And even like you did, Brant, you didn't see the people or the connections or all the steps as you looked forward. Those kind of came along and you were open to receiving them as they came, right? Serendipitously. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And totally accurate. And also, I made the mistakes. Like, I did it as a mistake, not as like purposeful, right? And so now I try to help people, and I'll give you an example. And I cross my fingers he's not watching this, but I got a pitch from a friend of mine. A friend of mine introduced me to another guy. Like, hey, this is my friend. Yeah, he can help you with his TV show idea, right? Because he had a TV show idea. He's a lifeguard and has a TV show idea. So I said, absolutely, have him call me whenever. The guy calls me. I mean, if you're Greg's friend, you're my friend. Okay, he's got an idea. He wants to do a competition series with surfboard shapers, guys who shape surfboards. And then each week they shape a different surfboard and they test it out in the water and see which surfboard is best. Okay. So that is a horrifically terrible idea that no one would watch, that would never sell in a million years.
It's like, I don't know anything about surfing.
It's on the paint drying station, the channel.
Yes. It's unbelievable. Now, here's the reality, right? He is a wildly successful lifeguard who has a passion, who likes this world, and looks at the other shows on TV and is like, that's stupid. Who wants to watch people baking? And
well, literally
applies that logic
everyone
to right. That's what it was. Instead of the Great British Bake Off, it's the Great American Shape Off or something like that.
The shave off.
Like something like that. Okay, so, but in his mind, he's like, this could work as a TV show. And that's really the amount of effort that that's where he gets hung up on that idea. That's the idea. What he didn't spend any time on was thinking about the idea that, like, you know, people do this for a living. If this was an idea that could have worked, do you think somebody would have came up with it already? How much actually has to go in from having an idea to getting it on a television? Like, it's an astronomical amount of work. So at the end of the day, what was he hoping for? Like, what did you want? You wanted to have this show go on the air, and are you going to get paid? So is it about money? Is it about exposing people to the wild world of surfboard shaping? Or like, did you want your name on the credits? Like, what is it that you actually want? Because what people miss about ideas is that you have to have what I call the reasonable probability of success. And you can get an idea to the 1 yard line all day long, right? You can get it almost in the goal. You can almost score a touchdown. That doesn't get any points, right? And that's really hard for people to accept. And I don't want to make this all negative or whatever and tell people.
No. This is actually positive, because
for 90% of the people out there,
you
should give up on whatever idea you have that's outside your core skill and your core competency. Most likely you should give up on it and never think about it again. And I have said that to people a lot of times. Like, you want to know what the best thing for you would be? To take this idea and never think about it again, because every second you spend on it is a second you are wasting of your life, because this will end up being nothing. And no one talks to people like that anymore. It's like, that's what people need to hear. I don't know why I'm doing this, but that's what he needed to hear that. And so even though he's a friend of my friend, I was like, never think of this idea again. Forget about it. You don't worry about ever being on TV. Like, live your life, do something in the lifeguard world, like, stay away. You will never make it. It's never going to happen, right? And so if you can't survive that kind of real life examination, you are going down the wrong path.
Okay, so I want to contrast this with what you shared at the beginning, because if people said that to you, this is stupid, you should set this down, you're doing it the wrong way, and then you go to Hollywood and they're like, dude, you're amazing. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
Like the giants and the smalls, you know, we look at this whole program and it's an idea. Like, I had a dream and a vision about it and I started writing it, and it's an idea, right?
Yeah.
And at any point, people are like, man, I don't want to see you suffer anymore. It's making me suffer and I'm tired of suffering. So will you quit so I can stop suffering? And I'm like, I'm not quitting. And I stuck with it, and it is what it is today. It's going to grow more. Like, I'm not letting go of this dream, right? I got a hold of it. It's like riding a bull. And but also I have this wisdom to take care of myself, because it's not quite, you know, where it needs to be to provide for my family, but I'm doing things that do that for me so I can play with it. And so if we talk about mindset, you know, if we take mindset into this, of who you're being while you're taking whatever skills you have and you're developing those, and maybe you do have a dream that's ridiculous that you don't want to let go of, and you want to go down that path, right? Like you did.
Okay.
What would you say to somebody about that?
Start at the beginning and do the work properly and take the proper steps, because there's no short. Because what's happening is somebody will watch you and hear your story, and they work at the post office.
Yeah.
And they think, I'd like to have a live show and do all this kind of stuff. And if they were talking to you and you were honest, you'd be like, yeah, don't do that. Like you've never been in this business. You don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Like, no, don't do that. It's not going to work for you. It's barely working for me and I'm killing myself. Okay. And so the problem is that people get the idea that they can do what you do because
Yeah.
they see you doing it at the end. And that's not the way it works. And so if they really wanted to be and have a TV show and do all the stuff you do, then it's like, okay, start from the beginning. Like take a course, learn
Yeah.
this, go work for someone, intern, like, because you can't plan to be lucky. You have to
I
plan
love that.
to do all the work necessary. And when you get lucky, you'll be ready to take advantage of it.
Brant, if I were to look forward at all I had to do to get to where I am today, I would have quit. There's no way I would have done it. I would have said, this is too overwhelming, because I have been through successes, failures, business partners, books that I wrote that never went anywhere, you know, books that I put up on ACX and Audible and all this stuff. And I got like maybe one purchase and I didn't quit, you know, getting up on stage and not being asked to come back. Right. Like the successes and the failures, if I looked forward and saw all that, I'd be overwhelmed by it. And thank God for blindness.
It's like,
right?
Well, and like here, I write about in the book, but one of my best friends and biggest clients, you know, he just sold his company for $200 million, and it's a plumbing company, effectively. Plumbing company. You know what he did for you know what he focused on every single day? Plumbing. You know what side hustles he had? Like that's not what he did.
Zero.
He learned.
He plumbed.
He did this stuff, and he sold his company for $200 million.
Huh.
You know how much I sold my company for? A lot less than $200 million. So. Okay, right? And guess what? I'm the guy who gets the reservations at the tables, and people return my phone calls, like, and people, you know, they think I am in such a sexy industry, and he is a plane. So that's the reality of the world, right?
Like, what's he doing next Sunday?
Exactly.
Right.
It's just like that's the reality. Is like people want what I have done. They want to be in this industry. They want to do these things, and it's like I try to explain. It's like, why? Like, what do you think is at the other side of this? Like, you think if you get your name on the credits on one TV show that no one's ever heard of, like that's going to make any difference in your life? Like, are you looking for recognition? Do you want to tell your parents you did something cool? Like, what is it that you actually want? Because if you're choosing something that's very difficult and very awkward and very awful and hard and low probability of success, it better have some reason for you. Now, if it's some passion for you and it's something you love more than anything in the world, well, I totally get that. But but I see a lot of those people too, and that's why it's like you have to you do something that you would do for free, and it's like you should, because for a lot of people that's what's going to end up being, right?
I like
if you don't have reasonable probability for success, it's very difficult to be successful. And all of the things that I've tried to do that weren't in my wheelhouse never worked, and the TV gig was very lucky. And it's because the skills that I had honed over the years of trying different businesses and, you know, starting and stopping different businesses and trying to raise money from friends and family to do stuff. It turns out I was honing skills that helped me pitch television shows in the world. Right. And so it's like, I go in and pitch the president of a network, a TV show. It's like, that's not a big deal to me, because I've been in rooms where if I didn't get $5,000 investment in my idea, I didn't eat. So like, I know how to pitch something and not look desperate when I'm desperate. Like, I got that. So I was able to use those skills in Hollywood, and, you know, that went really well. And so it's I see I get 30 to 40, you know, startups and company requests every single week. And so I see so much of it out there. And again, I see so many people that pitch me television show ideas because they do something in their life and they think it'd make a great television show.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a terrible idea.
Really, they're just shaping surfboards.
You were hitting on grit though too. I mean, as I hear this, it's that willingness to stick with it, because at any point you could have sat back and said, I'm a terrible person. I can't ever do anything. I'm no good at any, and given up and have no purpose at all. To have 300 successful pitches how many failures did you have, right? How many did you have to sift through, right?
Well,
That you learned
that
from.
was the entire genesis of leaving television as my day job and into this and writing the book. Was I was at the Lux Hotel with family, and I was telling about a TV show that the network had just passed on. And my uncle was like, "Oh my God, that's the greatest television show idea I've ever heard." And I was like, "I know, right?" And then I started telling them other ideas that didn't sell. And they were like, "What? How is that not a TV show?" And I'm like, "That's what I've been saying, right?" And so it's so good for my ego to like tell. And so I was pitching all these TV shows, and everybody around was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that's not on the air." And I was,
Yeah.
look how smart I am. And by the, after a while and a few drinks, it's very loud, and there's ends up being like a crowd of people around listening to these cool ideas I had. And a guy came up to me after and he said, "Hey, can you teach my clients to do what you do?" And I was like, "No, I can't teach people to sell TV shows." He's like, "No, can you teach my clients how to pitch their ideas without putting people to sleep?" And I was like, "I don't know. I've never thought about that." And he ran a very large investor conference that focused a lot on sort of like high complexity, boring industrial stuff. And so I happened to be in the same city at the time when one of his conferences. I went and saw it, and I sat in on an oil and gas company's pitch. $2 billion oil and gas company made this pitch for their stock. It was the worst thing I'd ever heard in my life. It was worse than this surfing shapeboard guy. It was so terrible. It was 28 minutes of, I couldn't even tell you what it was about. I had no idea what the heck this guy was talking about, or why anybody would invest in his company. It was just horrific.
And nobody else
And
could either
so
because they
when
were
I
all
helped
asleep.
him, they were asleep. And so I helped him with a couple of ideas, and I said, like, it sounded like you said you could drill for oil at $32 a barrel while everybody else is laying down their rigs at 39. And he's like, "Yeah, like I said, we got this lease and this and whatever." And I was like, you didn't, you waited till 17 minutes in to say that. Like, we should move. So we moved the slide up, and he tried, and it started to work. And so he said, like, "You got to come help me and rewrite this whole thing." And I was like, "I got a day job. Like, that's not what I do." And so he flew out to LA on the weekend, and I worked with him, and we redid his pitch just like I would a television show. And like 2 weeks later, he left a message on my voicemail, my phone, and I could hear the emotion in his voice as he was cracking up. And he's like, "You've changed my life. I will never be the same. I'll never forget what you've done. And I used to hate going on the road, and now I love it. And I love to talk about what I'm doing. And we've completed our raise, and the stock's up. And I just want to say thank you." And I remember thinking, like, "Oh my God, no network president has ever said anything like that to me ever."
Yeah.
And my caveman ego was like, "Ooh, we would like some more of that." Right. And so I told this investment banker, and I was like, "Hey, I like that gig." And he was like, "Yeah, we just closed the raise. Like, I got more clients for you." And then once that started, I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to do TV anymore. I just want to help people uncover their vision." Right. It's like the frustration of having something great and not being able to explain it to someone where they get it. And I'm sure people listening know that where they've pitched or tried to explain what their vision
Anything,
is,
any
and
kind of
people don't get
business
it.
or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
people don't get it. And you're like, you go away disappointed, and your only thought is they just didn't get it. He didn't understand it. Like, they didn't get it. And that's what I started to focus on, is like, hey, if I could make people understand your idea the same way you understand it, they'll be interested.
Well, helping us to
that
understand
resonated.
our own idea, because sometimes we can't even put, like you said, I couldn't even write my own intro to my book. It took me
Yeah.
16 hours to just even get the intro. That's how we are with our own business. When somebody says, explain to me what you do, we like shut off. Our brain just shuts off. I have no idea what I do. But what you've created with the 3-minute rule and I love the framework of it, is just a really simple way to explain what you do in a short period where people are either interested or they're not. And so quickly that you're not wasting all that extra time trying to explain, like putting them to sleep. Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you started out your whole journey with this idea, I'm going to create the 3-minute rule. Some dude reaches out and he says, "Hey, I'm tired of my people falling asleep during my pitches. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
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 And you went through that whole entire journey to get to that point, and you never saw that part.
Get to that point.
That never was on the radar. It just came because of all the other things that you had done to refine yourself to the point you are now. And if you wouldn't have had all those rejections from the network executives, and then talking about it in the bar with the people and getting loud, and then somebody else hearing it,
Oh,
What?
I'll give you another example to try to try to go on the more positive side of that self-belief.
Well, I think
not
this is
not
positive.
fail and everything, but like,
No.
so I started, it went very well. I helped a lot of big companies, and I coached some very high level CEOs, and I was kind of digging that, and I got hired by this big medical company in Miami, and I was flying down to work with them, and I'm researching the company, and I realize that the head and the founder has a wing of the Miami hospital named after him, and he's just like one of the most famous scientist guys. He's got methods of testing named after him. Like, it's just like, oh my God, like, in the pancreas, this is the guy of all guys. And
Uh,
I start to get panicky because it's like, I'm a reality television producer. What am I doing here with this company? Like, this is biomedical technology, right? And I start to get like this anxiety about, like, they're paying me way too much money, and they're gonna realize, like, what the hell, this guy doesn't know anything about anything. Like, he's a TV producer. Like, why are we doing this? Like, so, and we go and I meet him and his team, and we're going through to go meet, and he's giving me a tour of the area, and the diplomas are falling off the wall and he's tripping over them, and like, it's
Excuse
ridiculous,
me, I've
right?
got tons of these. Just throwing them around.
And
Just a
so,
handful of degrees.
yeah, so we sit there in this conference room, and there's 13 people in there, and they're going through all the details, and in about 15 minutes I realize, like, wait, so other than this gene therapy microsystem that you're doing, you guys don't know anything about anything else at all. Like, literally, that's the only thing you guys do well, because everything else about their company was a complete mess.
Huh.
And all of a sudden I realized, like, wait, it's not, I'm not the micro therapist. Like, I don't do the microscience. So it's like, that's not what they're looking to me to do. They're looking to me how to explain what they're doing and get people to believe in it. And it's like, I am the expert in that.
Yeah.
And I worked with I'm not going to say that who they are, but one of the major, like one of the big companies that everybody knows, right? Like an Uber kind of company that everybody knows, and new startup, Silicon Valley, sexy. It's amazing. And I went and did a ton of work for them. And all I could think of was, like, how can you keep this business running like this? How does this place survive? It was such a mess. And so on one of my keynotes, I have the secret to your confidence and to understanding, how to achieve the next level, is you have to keep this phrase in mind. And it's, nobody has all their shit together.
I like
Nobody.
it. Yeah.
A lot of people have some people have lots, but nobody has it all together. End of story.
A
And
lot of people are
so
hanging on by a thread.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so when you become good at something and specialize in something and become a level of expertise in something, you can use that. And the barriers to entry that a lot of people feel are there, and they want to get everything in the right place, and they want to do stuff, is you're self-inflicting. And even when I went to write the book, there's 100 TV producers, probably 1,000 TV producers that are far more skilled and have had bigger successes than I have, that could have written that book. And
Mm.
when you look at the number of them that did that, zero. I'm the one who did it. I put my hand up and said, like, I'll do it. I'm the guy. And at the time, it's like, did I have all the pieces? Like, no, I could have waited for years more to try to get more hits and bigger list of MDB or whatever else I could have made. I could have made excuses why I didn't do it at that point,
Yeah.
because
I'll
I'm just
wait
not
until,
enough,
right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are people that do better sales training, probably. There are people that do a lot of things better, and they don't do what I do. And so the fact is like, I'm the one who put up his hand and be like, I'm the expert in this. And now I have, I get awards for having one of the best. I just got some award the other day saying that 3 Minute Rule is the best presentation book ever made. I was like, okay, fine, whatever, sure,
throw it on my wall.
whatever.
Are
It's
you
one. It's like,
familiar? Yeah. Are you familiar with the word satisficing from Herbert Simon?
no.
It means to satisfy, and it's sufficient for the task, and it satisfies the need. It's good enough, basically.
Yeah.
And it'll
Right.
outperform perfection every time. And so it's from a Nobel
Yes.
Prize winner. And essentially that's what you do. I launch programs before I have them built out. Like, I'll have week 1 built, and it's a 12-week program, and I put people into it, and I build out the other
Yeah.
11 weeks while I'm going through it.
Yeah, it's
Like,
like you you're you're better and you're more skilled than you think you are.
yeah. And you know a
Because
lot,
other people
right?
are less skilled and less experienced than you think they are. Right. And I
And
say that on stage all the time,
Yeah.
particularly when I'm at schools, is like, I am not as rich or as famous as you think I am. That's just a fact. And
mm,
neither is anybody else really.
So
yeah.
many
Like,
people like will just, Brant, they'll just sit there.
yeah,
They'll think about all the things they need to do and what they want to do and tell everybody.
And then
Nick just does. He just starts
yeah,
stepping, just starts moving
yeah.
forward. And
Move
action,
forward.
like,
Yeah.
just start moving, do
Oh,
something, get
you're
out
better
there.
off to spend more time choosing like making sure the direction you're going to move is the right direction than you are figuring out all the steps and all the details, right? Like
well, there's
if you're
there's no
going
way to have all
towards
the
the right
resources.
thing,
Yeah, I
right,
can't have everything in front of me all at the same time. That'd be too much stuff to
right.
carry forward. So I just
You
take
just
what's
have to
available.
decide that this is an industry or an opportunity or an idea or whatever that you believe in and that has a reasonable probability of success. And
Mm,
then it's like, okay, get going and do the work.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's basically, why I do what I do today. And I have a friend who's pretty high level guy and he wants to do speaking stuff. And when he heard what I charged for a keynote speech, he's like, oh, it's amazing. And I was like, yeah, you won't get that. Like, because that's not where I started either. Right. Like
mm.
you have to do the work. You can't just see the end goal and be like, yeah, I'm just going to skip all the steps to be there.
Yeah, you know what's amazing about that? I think about football, and I'm not a football guy, but just the analogy here of the highest paid guy isn't the guy that knows how to do everything. Like the
Right.
quarterback or the running back or whoever is so niched in what they do, and they're so narrowed in on one focus, and they're so good at it that they're paid the highest salary because of that,
Yep.
because they are
Yep.
so focused, right?
Yep.
And the time that they put into it, the effort that goes into it. Somebody might watch them on TV at a game and see all the after work, right? But they
Yep.
don't see all the effort and the sweat that goes into it.
Or
Um,
you just need to be the punter or the place kicker, because that's like the plumber in Brant's story, his
yeah,
buddy,
right,
right?
That's
right.
right.
Like they go in, kick a couple of things every game, and it's like, and they get paid a lot to go just
Yeah.
for
Or the
30
long
seconds.
snapper.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
the long snapper. It's good at like firing that thing back a few yards and
Yeah. Like, do you know how many people think in their mind they could just go show up and do that or be a professional bowler or like any of these things? Or how about a cornhole? They play cornhole as a professional. It's like, oh, I could do that because I'm good. It's like, really? Because when you actually scratch the surface to see how much work goes in to do that, you won't want to do that. Right.
That's the thing. Thank God for blindness, right?
Yeah.
Looking forward, thank
Exactly.
God we can't see it, because we would all quit. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of
Oh,
effort.
yeah.
I think, the idea here that you present is you don't know the outcome until you get there, but you can
Yeah.
have your vision and you could choose whether you hang on to that vision or not. It's totally up to you.
Right.
But the biggest thing is you've got to put in the work. Like
You
you
got to put in
talk
the
to
work.
somebody about your keynote fees and they come in and say, that's awesome. Well, you've got to work and earn that. You got to develop into
Yeah.
that. It's not like it's just handed to you. Right.
No, and it's just it's life is very interesting that way, is that you end up getting what you put into it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so my success is a result of how much work and suffer and pain and skill I've developed. Yes, but like I said, if I had just focused on one thing, it would
Yeah.
have happened faster and I'd have more. That's just the fact. And it's like I always say, like, if you're okay in life without owning a private plane, like if you'd
Yeah.
be content without one, like I'm content, I don't own a plane and I'm content not having one, that means you're never going to have one, because people that have planes aren't happy with the planes they have. They want a bigger one. That's the way it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
And it's because to get to that level, the relentless dedication is so overwhelming that most people won't do that. They look at the target at the end and they're like, I'd like that. I'll be okay if I don't get that. Well, it's like, then you're guaranteed to not get that, right? If you're
Yeah.
like, I just want to be in this business, I don't want to be the best at it, then it's like, you won't be the best at it for sure, 100%, because the best at it is so much
Oh,
work and they're not happy,
that is so powerful.
right?
Contentness is relative, right? Like I have people that reach
Oh,
out and they say, "Oh, you don't need to do anything," and they're speaking to me from their contentness. And I'm like, no, that doesn't work for me. That may work for you, but I'm not settling right there. That's not where I want to build my mansion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I kind of retired, like I retired a couple of years ago because I'm in a little bit different life mode, and I don't take a lot of new clients, and I'm kind of in a coast mode, right? And I remember saying like, hey, if I don't make any more money from here on in, I'm totally content with that, right? And then the first couple of years after that, I made way more money, and I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. Except for that was probably from the work I had done before, because now here I am back to the point where it's like, oh right, I'm not really working that hard, and I'm not trying that hard, and guess what? Like, it's not as lucrative being sort of like content. Content is not as lucrative as being hungry.
That's
Surprise,
amazing.
surprise, Brant.
That's
right?
amazing. We should retitle this show to "Content is not lucrative."
Contentness.
No, as the more content you are, the less lucrative it becomes. Now, I'm at an age, and I have the ability to sort of like take that sort of in stride. And I run an adventure company, so I like to play and goof around and do fun things. So that's a good lifestyle choice for me at this age.
I like it. I like it. I think there's so much gold in what you shared today, because it really does dive into the dark side of creation. And you say, yeah, it's a little negative. It's not negative though. That's the work that needs to be done, because the thing what we do is we take who we are and then we try and act from there. And then who we are is a really negative space to be in, because we're not really dealing with any of our stuff. We're not really looking at reality as it is. We're not wanting to sit and slow down with our rumination and thoughts, and so I think it's powerful because it gives you a chance to really reflect on who you've been and develop into something even more powerful if you'll look at it. But we're so busy running from it, we don't do that.
Totally agree.
Yeah. I hear that. You totally agree. Yeah. That's awesome. What else do you want to share? We got about 4 minutes left.
Listen, the book has done really well. And I think it's because it's been resonating with people as a communication style, not just a way to pitch and present your ideas.
Yeah.
I think that in our world today, we underestimate the sensitivity of the audience to bullshit and over explaining. We're tired of being sold to. We're promised everything under the sun. We don't believe what people promise. We've been taught from a young age that like the elevator pitch is supposed to be something big and flashy to grab someone's attention, and then you tell them how that works. And I use this on stage. If I say, imagine if you're in an elevator and someone leaned in and was like, I have an investment idea that can make you 10 times your money by the end of the year. Is that something you'd be interested in? And the ideas were supposed to be like, oh wow, that's catchy, I really want that, let me lean in and be like, yes, tell me more. And it's like, is that the way you do that today? Or would you be like, oh my God, get me off this elevator with this creep, right? And it wouldn't matter what he said from that moment on, you wouldn't believe him. And so I think what's interesting is that, there's been such a wholesale evolution of that, yet sales techniques and training has not caught up. And so I teach a very different method. I teach the sort of inform and lead method, like the way we do in Hollywood is storytelling, which is to bring people into the story and lead them to the conclusion, not start with the conclusion and then try to prove it. Because you start with the conclusion, people will not believe you, and they will be looking to disprove it the entire time you speak. And that's a big problem. So, my method in the 3-minute sort of structure is basically like, can you tell me what this is? Can you tell me how it works? Can you tell me how you can validate that? And then can you tell me how I can get involved? Like, that's really all. It's 4 steps.
Yeah.
That's the way human beings make decisions. We conceptualize the idea first. We have to understand what it is we're talking about. Then we contextualize it, as in, how does this work for me? And then we actualize it and decide if we want to get involved or do it or not, right? It doesn't matter if you decide if you're going to war with a neighboring country or what shirt you're going to wear for dinner. The same exact decision process. And when you can build your communication style and your presentations to mimic that decision-making process, you find that your audience tends to go along much better with what you're hoping and what
Brant,
you're presenting. And so
it's easier for me to ramble on in a 200-page book than it is to write a 3-minute sales pitch. It's like concentrated vision. It's like to condense all of that down. It's like I'll ramble on for a month about what I know, but to be able to present it in 3 minutes is intense. It's intense.
Yeah. I make the joke all the time. Like, if you want my 1-hour keynote, no problem. It's $35,000. You want a 20-minute keynote? No problem. It's 50. right? It's going to take me way longer, and it's so much work to get it down to 20. Like, and even when I have a client that we just had to do a 7-minute presentation for this huge conference, and it's a massive opportunity. And oh my God, it was so much work to try to get it into 7 minutes. If it was 2 or 3 minutes, like the pitch we have, it's perfect. I already have it. And if it was 60 minutes or 45, oh my God, it'd be brilliant. But 7 is like, oh, what do we say? How do you do that? What's, and that's a lot of the key is you have to know what needs to be said, not what you want to say.
I want to bring this up because it's like, you want gold with dirt in it, or do you want refined gold? Because it's going to be more expensive, even though there's less stuff in it. It's going to be more expensive because it's concentrated. And so people devalue their time, as they come in like 15 minutes, 7 minutes. No, you don't realize what it takes to refine that down to a 7-minute message that's impactful. Because 60 minutes, I can talk and throw some dirt in there and you're going to feel fulfilled, but it's not going to be as valuable, right? That's powerful. Yeah. Ryan, any other thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I love that, like there's his journey, right? There's Brant's journey, and there's amazing gold nuggets inside of all of that too. But I am so grateful that somebody like Brant will come on and just right in the forehead, to people, because there's a lot of people that need to hear that it'll save them. They think, oh, that's so harsh, Brant. Like, this is my vision, this is my goal, this is what I want to do, and I feel like it would be a great show or great,
this is my baby.
This is shaping surfboards. It's going to be amazing. No, you probably shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. Like, Mayday, abort.
Listen, you can look up the article I wrote for Forbes on this, but it's just because everybody's telling you no does not mean they're wrong, right? Just because they're saying no does not mean that's not the right answer. So it may not be the one you want to hear. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah. And I'm just grateful, Brant, that you'll come on and you'll talk about that stuff too, because you really need to figure that part out before you go down this long road. Because you could do way better just having a mentor, somebody that tells you that, saves you some time. And like you said, you could be like the plumber and have a lot more money. If that was your goal and your purpose and the things you want to do, be the plumber. Go down that road. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where I got that's what hit me today. I've got a millionaire mentor friend that's it's almost identical to you in his ability to tell you that and just hit you and you're like, oh man. And it hurts sometimes. It hurts your ego. It hurts like who you are, but he's really doing it because he loves you and he wants you to not go through, like shaping surfboards, because it sucks. It's a stupid idea.
It does. It's a stupid idea.
Well, man, we appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. You got it, guys.
Yeah. For those that we will. And for those that are watching, you're where you are, so that's where you're coming from. So like you mentioned on the map, it's not where you're going. The X isn't where you're going. The X is where you're coming from. And so create from that. And clean the gold, right, Sandy?
Yeah. Stop decorating dog poop.
Yeah. Go make it a giant day, because like you said, the no may be the right answer, but individually we're the ones that decide what we're going to give our energy to and attention to. And it can be a really hard road. But one way or the other, we're going to figure it out. We're going to learn and grow if we're willing to learn and grow. But if we become content, that's it. At whatever point you become content, that's it. That's the end of your growth, right? And I think that's a powerful lesson right there. So really look at your contentness, because sometimes that might not be too lucrative. So true. We love you. Make it a giant day. We will see you in the next video.
Love you too.